Owner adopted and gave a senior dog its first toy. What happened next is incredible. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the rows of kennels. Bruce, a scruffy terrier mix with weary eyes, huddled in the corner of his cage. The shelter was a cacophony of barks and whimpers, a symphony of canine anxiety that echoed Bruce's own unease. He'd been here for a week, surrendered by his previous owners after his years as a breeding dog had come to an end. Life had been harsh for Bruce. He'd spent his days confined to an outdoor pen, his only companions the other breeding dogs. He'd never known the comfort of a loving home, the warmth of a human touch. Toys were foreign objects, treats an unknown luxury. His world had been one of concrete and chain link, devoid of kindness or play. His coat was matted and dull, his once bright eyes clouded with sadness. The shelter staff had done their best to clean him up, but the calluses on his legs and the faint scars on his face spoke volumes about his past. His teeth were worn down, likely from years of chewing on his cage, in a desperate attempt to alleviate boredom and frustration. Bruce flinched as a young child pressed his face against the bars of the kennel next door, his shrill cries adding to the din. He longed for peace, for a quiet corner where he could hide from the world. He yearned for a gentle hand to stroke his fur, a kind voice to soothe his troubled soul. Across the room, Aubrey and Corey strolled hand in hand, their eyes scanning the rows of cages. They had recently lost their beloved golden retriever, Charlie, to old age, and the silence in their home was deafening. They decided to adopt an older dog, knowing that senior dogs often get overlooked in shelters. "Look at that one, Corey," Aubrey whispered, pointing towards Bruce's kennel. "He looks so sad." Corey nodded, his heart aching for the forlorn figure huddled in the shadows. "Let's go meet him." They approached Bruce's kennel cautiously, not wanting to startle him. Bruce watched them with wary eyes, his tail tucked between his legs. He wasn't used to human interaction, and their presence filled him with apprehension. "Hi there, fella," Corey said softly, crouching down to Bruce's level. "What's your name?" Bruce didn't respond. He remained curled in his corner, his body trembling slightly. Aubrey knelt beside Corey, her voice gentle and reassuring. "He's beautiful, isn't he? And he looks so scared." A shelter volunteer approached them, a clipboard in her hand. "That's Bruce," she said. "He's a sweet dog, but he's been through a lot. He's not used to being indoors and he's a bit shy." "We can see that," Corey said, his gaze fixed on Bruce. "Can we take him out for a walk?" The volunteer smiled. "Of course. Let me get you a leash." As the volunteer retrieved a leash, Aubrey and Corey continued to talk to Bruce, their voices soft and soothing. Slowly, Bruce began to relax. He crept forward cautiously, sniffing the air tentatively. To their surprise, he nudged his head against Corey's hand, a silent plea for affection. Corey's heart melted. He gently stroked Bruce's head, feeling the coarse fur beneath his fingers. Bruce leaned into the touch, his tail giving a tentative wag. "He just wants to be loved," Aubrey whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. When the volunteer returned with the leash, Bruce allowed her to clip it onto his collar without resistance. He seemed to sense that these kind strangers might offer him the safety and comfort he'd been craving his entire life. As they stepped outside into the fresh air, Bruce took a deep breath, his senses overwhelmed by the new smells and sounds. He walked hesitantly at first, his body tense and unsure. But as Aubrey and Corey continued to talk to him in their gentle voices, he began to relax. He even ventured a few tentative sniffs of the grass, his tail wagging a little more confidently. By the time they returned to the shelter, a decision had been made. Bruce was going home with them. The car ride was a blur of sights and sounds for Bruce. He sat nestled between Aubrey and Corey in the back seat, his head resting on Aubrey's lap. He was still overwhelmed by everything: the car itself, the passing scenery, the unfamiliar scent of his new humans. He'd never been in a car before, never ventured beyond the confines of his former prison. When they finally arrived at their cozy, single-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Bruce hesitated to get out of the car. He whined softly, his tail tucked between his legs. The house loomed large and unfamiliar, and the thought of stepping inside filled him with trepidation. "It's okay, Bruce," Corey said gently, opening the car door and coaxing him out. "This is your new home now. No more cages, no more chains." Bruce stepped onto the grass gingerly, his paws sinking into the soft turf. He'd never felt grass beneath his feet before. He took a tentative sniff, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar scent. Aubrey and Corey led him towards the house, their voices soothing and encouraging. Bruce followed hesitantly, his eyes darting around nervously. He was overwhelmed by the sheer size of the house, the strange furniture, the unfamiliar smells. Inside, the house was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies. Aubrey had spent the morning preparing for Bruce's arrival, making sure everything was perfect for their new family member. But Bruce didn't seem to notice the cozy atmosphere. He cowered behind Corey's legs, his body trembling. The television in the living room flickered with images and sounds that sent him scrambling for cover. He shied away from the plush dog bed Aubrey had carefully placed in the corner. "He's scared of everything?" Aubrey whispered, her heart aching for the frightened dog. "It's okay, sweetheart," Corey reassured her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "He'll come around. It's just going to take time." They spent the afternoon trying to coax Bruce out of his shell. They offered him treats, but he refused to take them. They tried to entice him with a squeaky toy, but he just cowered further. He seemed terrified of everything: the stairs, the rustling curtains, the ticking clock. As the day wore on, Aubrey and Corey began to realize the extent of Bruce's neglect. He didn't know how to play, didn't understand the concept of treats, and seemed utterly bewildered by the simplest of human interactions. It was clear that he'd never experienced kindness or affection. "He's starving, but he's too afraid to eat," Corey nodded, his own heart heavy with sadness. "We need to find a way to help him." After dinner, they tried again to coax Bruce out of his corner. They sat on the floor, speaking to him in soft, reassuring tones. They offered him small pieces of chicken from their plates, holding them out patiently until he finally dared to take them from their hands. It was a small victory, but it gave them hope. They knew it would be a long road, but they were determined to help Bruce overcome his fears and learn to trust again. They were committed to giving him the love and care he'd been denied for so long. The first few weeks with Bruce were a whirlwind of emotions for Aubrey and Corey. They experienced moments of joy watching him tentatively explore the backyard, his nose twitching with curiosity as he discovered the wonders of squirrels and birds. But these moments were often overshadowed by the constant anxiety that seemed to plague their new companion. Bruce was afraid of everything. The whirring of the coffee grinder sent him scrambling under the sofa. The ringing of the doorbell made him cower and tremble. Even the rustling of leaves outside the window was enough to trigger a panic attack. Aubrey and Corey tried everything they could think of to help him. They played calming music, used soothing aromatherapy diffusers, and even tried a thunder shirt to help ease his anxiety. They enrolled him in a dog training class, hoping that socializing with other dogs and learning basic commands would boost his confidence. But progress was slow. Bruce remained skittish and withdrawn, his tail perpetually tucked between his legs. He flinched at every sudden movement, his eyes wide with fear. He spent most of his time hiding under furniture or cowering in the corner of a room. One evening, as Aubrey was preparing dinner, Bruce was startled by the clatter of pots and pans. He let out a yelp and bolted from the room, knocking over a vase in his haste. The vase shattered on the hardwood floor, sending shards of glass flying. Aubrey rushed to comfort Bruce, who was now trembling uncontrollably under the dining table. She knelt beside him, her voice soft and reassuring. "It's okay, Bruce," she whispered, stroking his fur gently. "It was just a noise. You're safe now." But Bruce remained terrified. He wouldn't come out from under the table, his eyes darting around nervously. Aubrey sighed, her heart aching for the traumatized dog. Corey joined her, kneeling beside her and wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "He's been through so much," he said softly. "It's going to take time for him to learn to trust us." "I know," Aubrey said, her voice choked with emotion. "But it's so hard to see him like this. I just want him to be happy." They spent the rest of the evening trying to coax Bruce out from under the table. They offered him treats, spoke to him in soothing tones, and even tried luring him out with his favorite blanket. But nothing worked. He remained hidden, his body trembling with fear. Finally, exhausted and disheartened, they decided to leave him alone. They cleared away the broken glass, turned off the lights, and went to bed. As they lay in bed, listening to the sounds of Bruce whimpering softly from the dining room, Aubrey and Corey felt a wave of despair wash over them. They had so desperately wanted to give Bruce a loving home, a chance at a happy life. But they were starting to fear that his past trauma was too deeply ingrained, that he might never truly overcome his fears. One afternoon, while browsing at a local pet store, Aubrey stumbled upon a bin overflowing with plush toys. A particular toy caught her eye, a small, lamb-shaped plushie with soft, brown fur and big, floppy ears. It looked so innocent and cuddly, she couldn't resist picking it up. "Do you think Bruce would like this?" she asked Corey, holding up the lamb.
Corey smiled.
"It's worth a shot. We've tried everything else." They purchased the lamb and headed home, eager to see Bruce's reaction. When they arrived, Bruce was, as usual, hiding under the coffee table in the living room. Aubrey knelt down and held out the lamb, her voice gentle. "Bruce, look what we got you," she said. "It's a friend for you." Bruce peered out from under the table, his eyes fixed on the lamb. He cautiously crept forward, sniffing the air tentatively. Then, to Aubrey and Corey's surprise, he reached out and gently took the lamb in his mouth. He carried it back to his safe haven under the coffee table, where he proceeded to sniff it thoroughly. Then, he did something they had never seen him do before. He started to lick the lamb, his tongue gently stroking its soft fur. Aubrey and Corey exchanged a look of astonishment. They had tried countless toys with Bruce, but none had elicited such a reaction. It was as if this simple, plush lamb had unlocked something within him, awakened a part of him that had been dormant for so long. Over the next few days, Bruce became inseparable from his new companion. He carried it everywhere with him, from the living room to the backyard, from his bed to the kitchen. He would often lie down and gently cuddle the lamb, his head resting on its soft body. Aubrey and Corey were overjoyed. They had finally found something that brought Bruce comfort, something that seemed to soothe his troubled soul. They named the lamb Lammy, and it quickly became a symbol of hope and healing in their home. One evening, as they were watching television, Bruce did something that brought tears to Aubrey's eyes. He walked over to the sofa, Lammy clutched firmly in his mouth, and placed it on Aubrey's lap. He then nudged her hand with his nose, as if inviting her to join him in his newfound joy. Aubrey gently picked up Lammy and held it close, her heart overflowing with love for the brave little dog who had captured their hearts. She looked at Corey, her eyes shining with tears. "He's going to be okay," she whispered. Corey smiled, his own eyes filled with emotion. "I know he is," he said. "He's finally found his home." The arrival of Lammy marked a turning point in Bruce's life. It was the beginning of his healing journey, the start of a new chapter filled with love, comfort, and the joy of finally having something to call his own. Life with Bruce was starting to feel normal. He still had his moments of panic, especially when confronted with loud noises or unfamiliar situations. The vacuum cleaner remained his arch-nemesis, and the mailman was greeted with a cacophony of barks every afternoon. But these episodes were becoming less frequent, less intense. Bruce was slowly but surely settling into his new life. He had claimed the corner of the living room sofa as his own, where he would spend hours curled up with Lammy, basking in the warmth of the afternoon sun. He had even started wagging his tail, a sight that never failed to bring a smile to Aubrey and Corey's faces. He was learning to trust, to let go of the fear that had haunted him for so long. He would now take treats from their hands without hesitation, his tail wagging excitedly. He had even started to play, albeit tentatively, with the squeaky toys Aubrey and Corey had bought him. But his past trauma still lingered, casting a shadow over his newfound happiness. He had accidents in the house, sometimes in the middle of the night, leaving Aubrey and Corey to clean up the mess with weary sighs. He would chew on furniture when left alone, his anxiety manifesting in destructive behavior. One morning, Aubrey and Corey woke to find their favorite throw pillows shredded to pieces, the stuffing scattered across the living room floor. Bruce cowered in the corner, his eyes filled with guilt and fear. "Oh, Bruce," Aubrey sighed, her voice laced with frustration. "What are we going to do with you?" Corey knelt beside Bruce, his voice gentle. "It's okay, buddy. We know you're still scared. We'll figure this out." They decided to consult a veterinarian specializing in animal behavior. The vet suggested crate training, assuring them it would provide Bruce with a sense of security and help him manage his separation anxiety. Bruce, however, was not a fan of the crate. He whined and barked whenever they tried to put him inside, his eyes pleading with them to let him out. Aubrey and Corey felt their hearts breaking, but they knew they had to be firm. They started by leaving him in the crate for short periods, gradually increasing the time as he became more comfortable. They made sure the crate was cozy and inviting, placing Lammy inside and leaving the door open so he could come and go as he pleased. Slowly, Bruce began to accept the crate. He started to see it as his own little den, a safe haven where he could retreat when feeling overwhelmed. The accidents became less frequent, the destructive behavior subsided. One evening, as Aubrey and Corey were getting ready for bed, Bruce surprised them by walking into his crate on his own, curling up with Lammy and closing his eyes. Aubrey and Corey exchanged a look of relief and joy. They had finally found a way to help Bruce manage his anxiety, to give him the sense of security he so desperately craved. Bruce was healing slowly but surely. He was learning to trust, to love, to be a dog. And Aubrey and Corey were learning to be patient, to understand, to love unconditionally. They were a family now, bound together by a shared journey of healing and hope. Just as Bruce was starting to truly blossom, a storm cloud appeared on the horizon in the form of Aubrey's parents, George and Martha. They were coming to visit for a week, their first visit since Bruce had joined the family. Aubrey and Corey were apprehensive. George and Martha were particular. They liked things a certain way, and they weren't shy about expressing their opinions. They weren't exactly animal enthusiasts either, preferring the pristine order of their cat-free, dog-hair-free home. Bruce, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, retreated to his safe space under the coffee table the moment George and Martha stepped through the door. He eyed them with suspicion, his tail tucked firmly between his legs. "Well, he's certainly a presence," George remarked, his nose wrinkling slightly as he surveyed the living room. "Does he shed much?" "He's still settling in," Aubrey said quickly, hoping to steer the conversation away from Bruce's shedding habits. "He's been through a lot, but he's a really sweet dog." Martha, however, was not easily deterred. "He looks rather anxious," she observed, peering at Bruce under the coffee table. "Are you sure you can handle a dog with issues?" Corey, sensing Bruce's growing distress, intervened. "He's making great progress," he said firmly. "He's learning to trust us, and he's starting to come out of his shell." But George and Martha remained skeptical. They spent the next few days tiptoeing around Bruce, treating him like a fragile piece of china that might shatter at any moment. They complained about his barking, his occasional accidents, and the faint scent of dog that lingered in the air. Bruce, in turn, responded to their apprehension with increased anxiety. He barked at the slightest provocation, his fear manifesting as aggression. He had a couple of accidents, much to George and Martha's dismay. The tension in the house was palpable. One evening, as they were sitting down to dinner, Bruce, startled by the sudden clatter of silverware, let out a sharp bark. George jumped in his seat, nearly spilling his wine. "Good heavens," he exclaimed. "That dog is going to give me a heart attack." Martha, ever the voice of reason, chimed in. "Perhaps he should be confined to his crate during meals," she suggested. It might be best for everyone. Aubrey and Corey exchanged a look of frustration. They knew that confining Bruce to his crate during meals would only exacerbate his anxiety. But they also knew that arguing with George and Martha would be futile. They spent the rest of the week walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace between their anxious dog and their judgmental parents. Bruce, sensing their distress, retreated further into himself, his newfound confidence shaken. By the time George and Martha finally departed, Aubrey and Corey were exhausted. They were relieved to have their home back to themselves, but they were also worried about Bruce. He seemed to have regressed, his fear and anxiety resurfacing with a vengeance. They knew they had a lot of work ahead of them, repairing the damage caused by their parents' visit. But they were determined to help Bruce regain his confidence, to show him that he was safe and loved, no matter what anyone else might think. The aftermath of George and Martha's visit left a lingering chill in the air. Bruce, once again retreating to the shadows, seemed to have lost the spark he'd so recently found. Aubrey and Corey, their hearts heavy with worry, redoubled their efforts to coax him back into the light. They resumed their patient routine, showering Bruce with affection, whispering reassurances, and tempting him with gentle play. They took him on long walks in the park, surrounding him with the soothing sounds of nature and the friendly faces of other dogs. One sunny afternoon, as they strolled through the park, a golden retriever puppy bounded towards Bruce, its tail wagging with joyful abandon. Bruce, initially startled, cowered behind Corey's legs, his body tense. But the puppy was persistent. Its playful barks and exuberant leaps an invitation Bruce couldn't resist. Tentatively, he stepped forward, sniffing the air cautiously. Then, to Aubrey and Corey's astonishment, he began to play. He chased the puppy across the grass, his own tail wagging with newfound enthusiasm. He rolled on his back, inviting the puppy to wrestle. He even let out a playful bark, a sound they hadn't heard from him before. Aubrey and Corey watched with tears in their eyes. This was a breakthrough, a moment of pure joy that transcended Bruce's past trauma. He was playing, truly playing, for the first time in his life. From that day forward, Bruce was a changed dog. He no longer cowered at the sound of the doorbell or trembled at the sight of strangers. He greeted visitors with a wagging tail and a hopeful sniff, his fear replaced by curiosity. He even started to initiate play, bringing his toys to Aubrey and Corey, dropping them at their feet with an expectant look in his eyes. He would chase his tail with abandon, his whole body wriggling with delight. One evening, as they were playing fetch in the backyard, Bruce did something that truly cemented his transformation. He brought the ball back to Corey, dropping it at his feet and looking up at him with shining eyes. Then, he did something he had never done before. He licked Corey's hand. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. It was a gesture of trust, of affection, of love. It was a gesture that said, "I'm home. I'm safe. I'm happy." Corey knelt down and wrapped his arms around Bruce, burying his face in his fur. "We love you, buddy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're so proud of you." Aubrey joined them, her own tears flowing freely. "You're our brave boy," she said, kissing Bruce's head. "You've come so far." Bruce, nestled between his two humans, closed his eyes and sighed contentedly. He was home, finally home, surrounded by love and acceptance. He was no longer the scared, broken dog who had arrived at their doorstep. He was Bruce, their beloved companion, their furry family member, their miracle. Life with Bruce had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The days were filled with simple pleasures, morning walks in the park, afternoon naps in sunbeams, evenings spent curled up on the sofa with his humans. The fear and anxiety that had once consumed him were distant memories, replaced by a quiet confidence and an unwavering trust in his beloved family. Bruce had become an integral part of their lives, his presence weaving a tapestry of warmth and joy into their home. He was their constant companion, their furry confidant, their source of unconditional love. They celebrated his birthdays with homemade dog-friendly cakes and silly party hats. They took him on adventures, to the beach, where he chased waves with reckless abandon, to the mountains, where he sniffed out hidden trails with his nose to the ground, to the local ice cream parlor, where he lapped up dog-friendly cones with gusto. Bruce, in turn, showered them with affection. He greeted them with enthusiastic tail wags and joyful barks every morning. He snuggled up to them on the sofa, his head resting on their laps as they read or watched television. He followed them from room to room, his presence a constant reminder of their love for him. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, the flames casting a warm glow on their faces, Aubrey and Corey shared their dreams for Bruce's future. "I want to take him to the Grand Canyon," Aubrey said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Imagine him sniffing out all those amazing scents, exploring those ancient trails. And we could take him camping," Corey added. "He'd love sleeping under the stars, listening to the sounds of nature." They spent the rest of the evening planning their adventures, their hearts filled with anticipation. They wanted to give Bruce the best life possible, to fill his remaining years with joy, love, and unforgettable experiences. As the years passed, Bruce's muzzle turned grayer, his gait a little slower, but his spirit remained young, his love for his humans unwavering. He was their constant companion, their furry soulmate, their reminder that love knows no bounds. One day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Bruce curled up on his favorite spot on the sofa, his head resting on Aubrey's lap. He closed his eyes, his breathing slow and steady. Aubrey and Corey, sensing that this was a special moment, sat quietly, their hands gently stroking his fur. They whispered their love for him, their voices filled with gratitude for the joy he had brought into their lives. Bruce took one last breath, a sigh of contentment, and then he was gone. He slipped away peacefully, surrounded by love, his heart filled with the memories of a life well lived. Aubrey and Corey wept, their tears a testament to the depth of their love for their faithful companion. But through their grief, they found solace in the knowledge that they had given Bruce the best life possible, that they had filled his days with love, laughter, and adventure. Bruce's memory lived on in their hearts, a reminder of the transformative power of love, the resilience of the spirit, and the enduring bond between humans and their animal companions. He was their miracle, their gift, their forever dog.